The forgotten kindness, the small carved stone fit perfectly in Bram Holloway's palm. A Mindari child had given it to him 3 hours ago, pressing it into his hand with 4 delicate fingers before running back to her mother. He turned it over now, studying the simple pattern etched into its surface. A circle within a circle, the Mindari symbol for gratitude. His ship, the steady runner, sat on the landing pad behind him. Empty now. 300 tons of grain delivered to a moon that was slowly starving. He had charged them nothing beyond fuel costs. "You know we cannot afford this," said Suri Okonkwo, his first navigator. She stood beside him, arms crossed, watching the Mindari workers distribute the food to long lines of hungry families. "We can afford it, Bram. We barely made the last payment on the runner." "We can afford it," he repeated. He slipped the stone into his pocket. "Because someone could afford it for us once. A long time ago." Suri knew the story. Every human knew the story. But she let him tell it anyway, because Bram needed to say it out loud. 180 years ago, humanity had reached for the stars. Colony ships carried millions of hopeful souls to new worlds. Then the drives failed, a design flaw that nobody caught until it was too late. 17 ships stranded in deep space. No fuel, no food, no hope. The Galactic Concord debated for 6 months about whether to help. Humanity was new, unproven. Resources were expensive. The Mindari did not wait for the debate to end. 3 ships. That was all they had to spare. 3 small ships loaded with food, medicine, and fuel. They crossed 400 light years to reach the stranded humans. It took them 2 years. When they arrived, 40,000 people were still alive. Barely. The Mindari asked for nothing in return. They simply helped because help was needed. Bram watched the food lines move slowly forward. Mothers held children. Elderly Mindari leaned on younger ones. Their wings, usually bright with color, looked faded and tired. "We still have not paid them back," he said quietly. "Not really. 200 years, and we still owe them everything." From a balcony above the landing area, an old Mindari watched the human and his navigator. Counselor Tethys had seen many things in his long life. He had watched humanity join the Galactic Concord. He had observed them grow from desperate survivors into a respected species. And he had noticed something that others missed. Humans remembered. They remembered every insult, every betrayal, every broken promise. They waited years, sometimes decades, to settle those accounts. But they also remembered every kindness, every helping hand, every moment when someone chose to be good to them. Tethys opened his small journal and wrote, "The human captain refused payment. He carries a stone from a child like it is made of gold. They have not forgotten us." He closed the journal and looked up at the sky. Somewhere beyond those clouds, beyond this small moon, the Mindari homeworld was in trouble. The Vothrian Dominion had surrounded it with warships. A blockade. 3 billion Mindari trapped on their own planet, slowly running out of food. The Galactic Concord was discussing the situation. They had been discussing it for 3 weeks. Discussions could take years. Tethys wondered if the humans knew. Below, Bram's communicator buzzed. Suri answered it while he continued watching the food distribution. Her face changed as she listened. Went pale. Went hard. "Bram." He turned. "The Mindari homeworld. The Vothrians have blockaded it. Full military siege. No ships in or out." Bram was silent for a long moment. His hand went to his pocket, to the small stone. "How long?" 3 weeks already. They say the food will last maybe 2 more months. 3 billion people. 2 months of food. Bram did the math in his head and felt sick. What is the Concord doing? Talking. There are treaty complications. The Vothrians claim the Mindari violated trade agreements. It could take a year to sort out. A year. Yes. Bram looked back at the food lines. At the hungry children. At the faded wings of the elderly. This was one small moon with a few 100,000 people. The homeworld had 3 billion. "Get the runner ready," he said. "Bram, we cannot fight a blockade. We are a cargo ship. I know what we are." He started walking toward the ship. "And I know what we owe. Give me a channel to Earth. To the Hall of Remembrance." Suri stared at him. The Hall of Remembrance. Where humanity kept its records. Every debt, every favor, every promise made, and every promise broken. "You want to call in the ledger? I want to remind people what the Mindari did for us. What we would be without them." He stopped at the ship's ramp and turned back to look at the moon one more time. at the counselor watching from his balcony, at the child who had given him a simple stone. "We remember," Bram said, though no one could hear him. "We always remember." Above the moon, the stars waited. And somewhere among them, 3 billion people were counting the days until they starved. Humanity was about to answer. The book weighed 11 kilograms. Real paper, real ink, real binding made from leather that came from a real cow on Earth. Director Amara Diallo lifted it from its case with both hands and set it on the reading table. This was the original ledger. The first one, started 212 years ago when humanity realized they needed to keep track. Of course, everything was digital now. Backup servers on 3 planets held every record, every name, every date. But the Hall of Remembrance still kept the old books. Because some things needed to be touched, needed to be real. Amara opened the ledger to a page marked with a red ribbon. The ink had faded slightly over the centuries, but the words were still clear. Year 4212. The colony ship collapse. 17 vessels stranded. Total souls aboard, 847,000. Surviving after rescue, 40,227. Aid received from the Minari Confederation. Ships sent, 3. Crew lost during journey, 12. Resources provided, enough. Debt status, outstanding. Amara read the words she had read 100 times before. Then she picked up a pen and wrote in the margin, called. Year 4412. 200 years due. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Director, Admiral Resnick is here. And Ambassador Tanaka. Send them in." Admiral Pyotr Resnick was a tall man with gray hair cut short and a face that had forgotten how to smile decades ago. Ambassador Yuki Tanaka was small, sharp, and dressed in formal diplomatic robes. They made an odd pair standing together. "Show me," said the Admiral. Amara turned the ledger toward him. He read the old entry, then the new note in the margin. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes shifted. "The Concord will not help," said Ambassador Tanaka. "I spent 6 hours in session today. The Vothrians have too many allies, too many trade agreements. Nobody wants to risk war over the Minbari. The Minbari risked everything for us," said Amara. "I know, but the Concord does not care about history." Admiral Resnick looked up from the ledger. "How many warships can we mobilize in 2 weeks? 200, maybe 220. The Vothrians have 800 around the Minbari homeworld. Bad odds. Very bad." The Admiral was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What about civilian ships? Cargo haulers? Transports? Medical vessels?" Tanaka frowned. "What are you thinking?" "I am thinking that we cannot win a war. But maybe we do not need to win a war. Maybe we just need to get food through a blockade." Amara understood immediately. "You want to use civilian ships as supply runners. Protected by the military. Protected. Sacrificed if necessary." The Admiral's voice was flat. "I will not lie to people. If they volunteer, they need to know they might die." "You think people will volunteer?" Admiral Resnick almost smiled. "Almost. Director, you keep the ledger. You know what we remember. Put out the call. See what happens." The call went out that night. Amara recorded the message herself, standing in front of the original ledger, the old book open on the table behind her. 200 years ago, humanity was dying. 40,000 of our ancestors survived because 3 Minbari ships crossed the stars to save them. The Minbari asked for nothing. They simply helped because we needed help. Now 3 billion Minbari are trapped on their homeworld, starving. The galaxy will not save them. We will. If you have a ship, if you have supplies, if you have skills we need, come to Earth. The debt is being called. It is time to pay." The response was immediate. Within 24 hours, over 2,000 ships had registered for the convoy. Cargo haulers from the outer colonies, passenger liners from the luxury routes, mining vessels, research ships, personal yachts owned by wealthy families who had never worked a day in their lives but remembered the stories their grandparents told that a 90-year-old woman named Hanna Voronova flew her late husband's shuttle from Mars to Earth. When asked why, she said, "My great-great-grandmother was on Colony Ship 7. She lived because the Minbari came. I have had a good life because they came. This is the least I can do." Ambassador Tanaka delivered humanity's response to the Galactic Concord 2 days later. She stood at the podium, small and calm, and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the chamber. "The Concord has chosen not to act. Humanity understands. Treaties are complicated. Politics are difficult. We do not ask you to help. We only ask you to watch. Watch what happens when you help humanity. Watch what we do for those who stood by us. And remember this moment, every species in this chamber, because someday you may need friends. And you will want friends like us. The Vothrian ambassador rose from his seat. This is interference. This is an act of war. Tanaka looked at him with eyes that showed no fear. Then it is war. The chamber erupted. Shouts, demands, threats. Ambassador Tanaka walked out without looking back. Humanity was going to war. Not for land. Not for resources. Not for power. For a debt 200 years old. And the galaxy would watch. Private Kiran Mehta had never seen so many ships in one place. He stood at the observation window of the military transport and tried to count them. He gave up at 300. The staging area near Proxima Centauri looked like someone had emptied every dock in human space into a single location. Warships floated beside cargo haulers. Medical frigates shared space with converted cruise liners. Mining vessels with their heavy armor drifted next to sleek passenger yachts that had never carried anything heavier than champagne. 4,200 ships. Only 200 of them military. Kiran was 23 years old. He had joined the defense fleet because he wanted to see the galaxy and because his mother said it would teach him discipline. He had not expected to be heading into a war within his first year of service. He pulled out his tablet and started writing a letter to his sister. Priya, I am not sure when I will be able to send this, so I am writing it now while we wait. You have probably seen the news. Yes, I am part of the convoy. No, I am not scared. Okay, maybe a little scared. But you should see these people. There is a grandmother on the ship next to ours. She flew her own shuttle here from Mars. She is 90 years old, and she says she is not missing this for anything. There is a family on one of the cargo ships. Mother, father, 2 teenage kids. They sold their house to fill their ship with medicine. When the commander asked them why, the father said his ancestor was saved by the Mindari. He said he owed them a house. At least. Kiran paused and looked out the window again. A massive ship was moving into position. The Hope Sufficient, the biggest medical vessel in the fleet. It could hold 10,000 patients, he continued writing. Everyone keeps talking about debt, about what we owe. I did not understand at first. The Mindari helped us 200 years ago. Nobody alive today was there. Why do we owe anything? But then I talked to Captain Deshi Abubakar. She runs the Hope Sufficient. She told me something that I have not been able to forget. She said that debt is not about money. It is about who you are. The Mindari helped us when nobody else would. They did not ask what they would get in return. They just helped. That is who they are. And going to help them now, even though it is dangerous, even though we might die, that is who we are. We are the people who remember. We are the people who pay back. If we do not do this, then we become something else. Something worse. I think I understand now. The ship's intercom crackled. All personnel, Admiral Resnick will address the fleet in 10 minutes. All stations prepare for broadcast. Kiran saved his letter and moved to the main deck where a large screen showed the Admiral's face. Around him, other soldiers gathered. Some looked confident. Some looked terrified. Most looked like Kiran felt. Uncertain but committed. Admiral Resnick appeared on screen. He looked tired, but his voice was steady. For 1,200 ships. 12 million people. That is what answered the call. I want you to understand what that means. Nobody ordered you to be here. Most of you are civilians. You left homes, jobs, families. You came because you remembered. The Vothrians have 800 warships waiting for us. They think we are fools. Maybe we are. But we are fools who keep our promises. I will not lie to you. Some of us will not come back. The military ships will do everything possible to protect the convoy, but we are outnumbered. If you want to leave, leave now. No shame. No judgment. But if you stay, stay knowing what you are risking. Stay knowing why. The Admiral paused. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. My grandmother was on Colony Ship 12. She was 6 years old when the drives failed. She told me once about the day the Mindari ships arrived. She said her mother cried. Everyone cried, because they had given up hope. And then 3 ships appeared, crewed by aliens they had never met, carrying food and fuel and medicine. 3 ships that saved 40,000 lives. My grandmother lived because of those 3 ships. I exist because of those 3 ships. Many of you have similar stories. This is not ancient history. This is family. And family does not abandon family. Bram Holloway watched the broadcast from his small cargo ship. The steady runner was somewhere in the middle of the fleet, surrounded by larger vessels. Suri stood beside him, arms crossed, listening. "We go to pay a debt," Admiral Resnick said. "May the galaxy witness what humanity does for those who helped us. May they see and remember, because we certainly will." The broadcast ended. Suri let out a long breath. "Well, here we are." Bram touched the carved stone in his pocket. The Mindari child's gift. He had not let it out of his sight since leaving Tessana. "Here we are," he agreed. Outside the window, the fleet began to move. 4,200 ships turning toward the darkness, toward the blockade, toward whatever waited for them. Kieran finished his letter to his sister. "We are leaving now. I do not know what will happen, but I know this is right. The Mindari came for us. Now we come for them. I love you. Tell Mom and Dad I love them too. Do not worry about me. I am exactly where I need to be." He pressed send, hoping the message would reach her before the fleet jumped. Then he picked up his rifle and went to his station. High Commander Draxus had been watching the sensor screens for 6 hours when the human fleet arrived. One moment the space around the Mindari homeworld was empty except for his 800 warships. The next moment, 4,000 contacts appeared all at once. He laughed. "This is their response. Cargo ships and passenger liners." He turned to his tactical officer. "How many actual warships?" "Approximately 200, Commander. 200 against 800. They are either stupid or insane." "Possibly both, Commander." Draxus settled back in his command chair. This would be easy. A few warning shots. The humans would scatter, and the blockade would continue until the Mindari surrendered their disputed territory. Simple. Then the broadcast started, every frequency, every channel, every wavelength that could carry a signal. The human fleet flooded them all with the same message. Not threats, not demands. Stories. "My name is Hannah Voronova. I am 90 years old. My great-great-grandmother was on Colony Ship 7 when the drives failed. She survived because the Mindari came. I am Captain Deshi Abubakar of the medical vessel Hope Sufficient. My family exists because Mindari doctors treated the sick and wounded on the stranded ships. I am here to return the favor. I am Bram Holloway. Last month, a Mindari child gave me this stone. She had nothing else to give. She gave it anyway. I am here because that is what humanity does. We remember the small kindnesses. We remember all of it. Thousands of stories. Millions of words. 200 years of gratitude poured across every communication channel in the system. On the Mindari homeworld, Speaker Orenith sat in her council chamber and listened. Tears ran down her aged face, catching in the fine lines around her mouth. Her wings, faded with age and stress, trembled. "They came," she whispered. "After all this time, they came." Draxus cut the broadcast from his ship's speakers, but he could not stop them. His crew heard them through personal devices. Other species monitoring the system heard them. The entire galaxy was listening. "Enough of this," Draxus growled. "Send them a warning. Leave now or be destroyed." The message went out. Admiral Resnick's response came back immediately. "We are not here to fight you. We are here to feed them. You can try to stop us." Draxus stared at the screen. He cannot be serious. But the human fleet was already moving. The military ships formed a protective shell around the civilian convoy. Cargo vessels loaded with food and medicine began their approach to the planet. "They are actually doing it," said the tactical officer. "They are trying to run the blockade." "Then stop them. Target the lead cargo ships." The first Vothrian weapons fired. Bright lances of energy streaked across space toward a cargo hauler named the Simple Truth. It carried 300 tons of grain and a crew of 12 that a human warship threw itself into the path. Lieutenant Fatima al-Rashid saw the destroyer take the hit meant for the cargo ship. The Relentless. She knew people on that ship, had trained with some of them. "All fighters, cover the convoy," she said into her comm. "Protect the supply ships. Nothing else matters." Her squadron dove into the chaos. Vothrian interceptors swarmed around them. Fatima lost her wingman in the first 30 seconds. Then another pilot. Then another, but the cargo ships kept moving. The battle spread across the system. Human warships fought and died, buying time for civilian vessels to reach the planet. The Vothrians had numbers and firepower. The humans had something else. They would not stop that a cruise liner converted into a hospital ship took a direct hit to its engine section. Instead of retreating, The captain used the remaining momentum to drift toward the planet, broadcasting medical supply manifests so the Mindari would know what was coming. A mining vessel with reinforced hull plating positioned itself between Vothrian guns and a passenger transport carrying doctors. It took 17 hits before it finally broke apart. The transport made it through. Bram Holloway flew the steady runner through a gap in the Vothrian line. Suri worked the sensors, calling out threats. They were too small to be a priority target, but stray fire still exploded around them. 60 seconds to atmosphere, Suri said. We are going to make it. They made it. The steady runner touched down on Mindari soil 4 hours after the battle began. Bram opened the cargo doors and watched the Mindari workers rush forward to unload the food. A young Mindari stood at the edge of the crowd, watching him. Bram recognized the pattern on her wings. The same child from Tessana. Somehow she had made it to the homeworld. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the carved stone. Held it up so she could see. She smiled. Above them, the battle raged on. Humans died. Ships burned. But the supplies kept coming. 1 ship, 10 ships, 100 ships. The Vothrians could not stop them all. Admiral Resnick watched the casualty reports scroll across his screen. So many names. So many losses, but the supplies were getting through. Sir, said his communications officer. The Mindari are broadcasting. They want to talk to you. Speaker Orenith appeared on screen. Her eyes were still wet with tears. Admiral, your people are dying for us. Yes. Why? After 200 years, why does this debt still matter? Resnick was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because we are human. And humans remember. We remember everything. Always. The speaker bowed her head. Then we will remember this. Forever. The blockade was breaking. The galaxy was watching. And humanity was paying its debt in blood and fire and grain. Trademaster Quill had been watching the battle for 3 days. His observation vessel sat at the edge of the Mindari system, sensors recording everything. He was Telluri, a species known for commerce and careful neutrality. His people did not involve themselves in other species' wars, but this was not a war. This was something else. On his screen, another human cargo ship burned. It had been carrying medical supplies. The crew had stayed aboard until the last moment, ejecting the cargo pods toward the planet before the hull collapsed. The supplies would reach the surface. The crew would not. What are they doing? Asked his first officer. They must know they cannot win. They are not trying to win, Quill said quietly. They are trying to help. He pulled up his records. 30 years ago, the Telluri had a trade dispute with humanity, a misunderstanding about contract terms. Legally, the humans could have walked away. The courts would have supported them. They would have saved millions of credits. Instead, they honored the original agreement. Every credit, every shipment. When Quill asked why, the human negotiator had smiled and said, we do not break our word, even when it costs us. Quill had thought it was foolish at the time. Now he understood. Prepare the fleet, he said. His first officer stared at him. Trademaster? We have no fleet. We have 50 merchant vessels. 50 armed merchant vessels. And we are not using them. The Concord has not authorized any intervention. If we act alone. Quill watched another human ship throw itself between Vothrian guns and a civilian transport. They acted alone. They are dying alone. I do not want to be the species that watched and did nothing. His message went out to every Telluri ship in range. 23 answered immediately. The rest followed within the hour. The Telluri were not the only ones watching. High Voice Selix represented the Braneth Collective, a species of linked minds who spoke with one voice. 40 years ago, a plague had swept through their colony worlds. They had asked the Galactic Concord for help. The Concord had debated. The debates lasted months. The humans had not debated. They sent doctors, scientists, medical ships. They spent 3 years helping the Braneth find a cure. They asked for nothing in return. What? Selix had asked at the time. The human mission leader had shrugged. You asked for help. As if that was enough. As if helping someone who asked was simply what you did. The Braneth Collective reached a decision in 16 seconds. Faster than they had ever decided anything. 12 of their vessels changed course toward the Mindari system. High Commander Draxus received the news with growing disbelief. First the Telluri, then the Braneth, then the Keshin, who remembered that humans had defended their colony from pirates 50 years ago. Then the Solani, who remembered that humans had shared water purification technology during a drought. 30 species. Over 300 ships. None of them were military powers. None of them could challenge the Vothrian Dominion alone. But they were coming anyway. "This is impossible," Draxus said. "Why would they risk war with us?" His tactical officer had no answer. The Vothrian High Command had an answer. They had been watching too. They had seen the casualty reports. They had seen the broadcasts, the stories, the testimonies. They had seen what humanity was willing to sacrifice, and they had seen the galaxy respond. The message came directly to Draxus from the Dominion Council. "Disengage. Withdraw. The political cost is too high." "We are winning," Draxus protested. "Their fleet is broken. Another day, and we will destroy them all. Look at your sensors, Commander. Count the ships coming. Not just the humans now. Everyone. Everyone who owes humanity something. Everyone who wants humanity to owe them something. If we destroy this fleet, we become the enemy of every species that values loyalty. Withdraw." Draxus looked at his sensors. 300 ships. 400. The number kept growing. He gave the order. On the Minari homeworld, newskeeper Solace recorded everything. The moment the Vothrian ships began to pull back, the cheers from the human crews, the Minari rushing out of their shelters to watch the sky. Speaker Ornith stood on the steps of the council building, surrounded by her advisors, watching the enemy retreat. "They did it," she said. "The humans actually did it." Counselor Tethys, old and tired and weeping, opened his journal one more time. He wrote with a shaking hand. "They came. They remembered. I always knew they would. The debt is paid. But the memory will last forever." Above them, the sky cleared. Supply ships continued to land. Food, medicine, engineers, teachers. Everything humanity had promised. Bram Holloway stood beside his ship and watched the Vothrians leave. Suri stood next to him, silent for once. "We lost a lot of people," she finally said. "We did. Was it worth it?" Bram looked at the Minari gathering in the streets. Children who would not starve. Families who would survive. A species that would remember this day for the rest of their existence. "Yes," he said. "It was worth it." The galaxy had watched. The galaxy had joined, and the galaxy would never forget what humanity did for those who helped them. 1 year later, the monument stood in the central square of the Minari capital. It was carved from white stone that caught the light of the twin suns and scattered it in soft patterns across the ground. A human hand reached down from above. A Minari hand reached up to meet it. Where they touched, the stone had been polished smooth by thousands of visitors who had come to run their fingers across the connection. Bram Holloway had not expected to be here. He had expected to go home after the blockade broke, return to his cargo runs, his debts, his ordinary life. Instead, he had stayed. There was work to do, food to distribute, supplies to move. He had spent the year flying relief missions across the Minari worlds. Now he stood in the crowd, watching the ceremony. Suri stood beside him, as she always did. "I cannot believe they invited you to speak," she said. "Neither can I." Speaker Ornith took the stage first. She looked different than she had a year ago. Healthier, stronger. Her wings caught the sunlight and glowed with colors that had returned after months of proper nutrition. "1 year ago, we were dying," she said. Her voice carried across the square to the thousands gathered. Human and Minari together. Other species too. Telluri merchants. Branith observers. Representatives from the 30 worlds that had sent ships. 1 year ago, we had lost hope. And then they came. She gestured to the monument behind her. 200 years ago, we sent 3 ships to save 40,000 humans. It seemed like the right thing to do. We did not ask for anything in return. We did not expect anything in return. But humanity remembered. When we needed them, they came with 4,000 ships and 12 million people. They fought and died for us. They bled for us. They saved us. She paused, letting the words settle. Today, I formally declare the original debt settled. But I must be honest. We know it is not truly settled. Because now we owe them. And we will spend the next 200 years trying to pay that debt. The crowd applauded. Minari and humans together, Ornith smiled. And now I would like to invite someone to speak. A human who was there at the beginning. Who brought food to our people on Tessena before the blockade even began. Captain Bram Holloway. Suri pushed him forward. Go. They are waiting. Bram walked to the stage on legs that felt unsteady. He had no speech prepared. He had no idea what to say. He climbed the steps and stood next to the speaker, looking out at the crowd. So many faces. So many species. all of them watching him that he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small carved stone. The surface was worn now, the pattern faded from months of handling. But it was still there. A circle within a circle. Gratitude. A year and a half ago, he said, a child gave me this stone. She had nothing else. Her people were starving. But she gave me this because I had brought food to her moon. I have carried it every day since. Through the blockade. Through the battle. Through everything. He turned to face the crowd more directly. I came here today to give it back. To say thank you for the gift. To return something that was given in kindness. He looked at the audience, searching. Found her in the third row. Tessani, the child who had given him the stone. Not a child anymore. A young woman with bright wings and curious eyes. But someone once told me something important. They said that gifts are not debts. You cannot repay a gift. You can only accept it with gratitude and pass it forward. Tessani stood up from her seat. The crowd parted as she walked toward the stage. So I am not giving this back, Bram said. I am keeping it. And I am making a promise instead. As long as I live, as long as my children live, as long as any human lives who remembers this day, we will be there when you need us. Not because we owe you, but because that is what family does. Tessani reached the stage. She looked at the stone in his hand, then at his face. You came, she said simply. We always will. She reached out and closed his fingers around the stone. Then keep it. And remember, I will. In the Hall of Remembrance on Earth, Director Amara Diallo updated the ledger. She turned to the page with the Mindari entry, the one marked with a red ribbon, and wrote carefully in the margin, Year 4413. Debt declared settled by Speaker Orineth. Status changed from outstanding to active. Relationship ongoing. The debt has become family. She closed the book and placed it back in its case. Ambassador Yuki Tanaka addressed the Galactic Concord one final time that day. She stood at the podium, small and calm as always, and looked out at the representatives of 100 species. Let this stand as notice, she said, to every species in known space. Humanity keeps every debt. Help us, and we will move stars to help you. Harm us, and we will remember that too. We have very long memories. Choose wisely what you want us to remember. She paused and let a small smile cross her face. But know this also. We prefer to remember kindness. We prefer friends to enemies. And if you give us the chance, we will be the best friends you have ever had. She stepped back from the podium. The galaxy listened. The galaxy heard. And the galaxy would remember.